bunch for the rest of the time.
Meeting will be shorter then.
I guess you all know me. I don't know of anybody that doesn't. And I guess I get first name almost everybody. And it's nice to be here to join the Historical Society, and I don't know why. I'm not an antique person, so I guess maybe that's the reason.
You're closer than you think.
So, without further, I had a couple stopped yesterday. They had come up from Florida and they bought some syrup and sat down a little while and chatted. And when they got up to leave, he said, "Now, when you start at the tree." And I guess that's a good idea. Hard maples don't grow all over. They grow in a long crescent from Nova Scotia down through Maine and Vermont and across the bottom of the Great Lakes. And if you go west of Minnesota, you won't see very many. So it's a local product, although it's consumed almost all over the country. And for that reason, Canada makes a lot of syrup. Canada has the further advantage, at least the Canadian sugar makers do, of having the government subsidizing for almost everything they do. So they can put in some pretty good equipment where other people can't afford it. In my own situation, I've been tapping for, I guess, about 45 years. We bought the 40 across the road right after the highway went through, and that was about 1960. And I noticed it had maple trees on it, so we tapped a few years after that, and I've been going at it ever since, until last year. I got into sugar making. Does anybody remember Jake Secord? Some of you will smile. Anyway, he worked at the post office, and he had a heart attack, and he couldn't work, but he had a sugar bush out in the woods behind the house, and he asked me if I would be interested in doing a sugar bush with him. And I said, "Well, I don't know much about it." He said, "Oh, there's not much to it." And my dad said he'd help me, and my dad was an old style sugar maker where they had a big iron kettle and they just boil it in the backyard. But anyway, 2 years I worked with Jake Seacock. I didn't work with him, I worked with my dad, but Jake and I split the syrup. I don't know how good it was. I remember we took a milk can and a half full upstairs to the house, and he said, "Boy, that's pretty heavy." So I guess we boiled it enough. But with a flat pan, you have to boil a longer time. And syrup has, or sap and syrup, have a quality that a lot of people don't realize. You can remove water from the sap by reverse osmosis, and you can remove it other ways also. But in order to get the taste and the color, you've got to boil it. So no matter how many, you still got to boil the sap. You don't boil it as long. The longer you boil sap, the harder, not the harder, but the heavier it gets, and the darker it gets, and the stronger taste it gets. So an optimum time for being in the boiling process should be about an hour and a half. Earlier in the season, you make a lot of sugar in the sap. Later in the season, to 67% sugar. Sap originally is about anywhere from 1% to maybe 4%. I've never seen it like that, but I've seen it over 3. A lot of it between 2 and 2.5. It lasts there for about half the season, then it gets a little light. So you boil harder. When it gets, so you're tired of boiling, or the tree's boiled, then you quit. If I start at the tree, I've got trees that I've tapped every year for the 45 plus years that I have been doing this, and they're still healthy and still giving me a lot of sap every year. I've lost 6 trees, maple trees, due to death. I lost them in the storm, but due to death and dying, I've only lost 6 trees. And over half of those was right next to a roadway which came into the woods. So I probably killed them myself driving over the roots. A forester said, well, that's pretty good. If you only lose 6 trees in 40 years, you don't have to worry about the health of the trees. They're in good shape. Probably 60 or more % of my taps are within, from here to the dumpster over there, from the sap house. So a lot of them we can carry easily. And when I carried it, that was a good thing. And when I located my sap house, I put it on the highest place in the woods because it would dry off quicker and it wouldn't be so muddy. And that was very true. But when tubing came along, I couldn't tube any of it uphill. so I paid for that decision. Started out with some used buckets. Spile goes in a hole 7/16 in the tree and probably 2.5 inches deep. And used to hang a bucket on each one and go around and gather all the buckets. One of the first things I bought was a manual that was put out by Michigan State College how to do this stuff. And it gets quite technical, but you do learn quite a bit. And it rubs off and you use what you need to. A tree 10 inches, at that time, a 10-inch diameter tree would support 1 bucket. 15-inch tree would support 2, 20-inch trees support 3, 24-inch would support 4, and I've got 2 or 3 that I have 5 buckets on. So it went along like that till I figured that, well, the inspector figured. The inspector figured I better get rid of my buckets. He said, you can get something else that isn't so dirty. But he figured that buckets will accumulate dirt and dust and debris, and the birds fly over and the squirrels chatter over and all of that. But I was careful of what I gathered anyway. But I drifted from buckets to plastic bags. The plastic bag is about 7 inches across the top, and it bulbs out in the bottom and will hold 10 quarts or so of sap if it's full. And you hang that over the spile, and when you dump it, there's a whole handhold in the corner that you just lift up, and you hope you got the bucket to catch the sap in the right place.